Hello,
Right.
everyone. I'm
Hi.
Alexandra Berthault, and I'm in charge of the newsletter at the Feng Shui Society in the UK. And today I'm hosting Dr. Jin Peh. Welcome. I'm going to give you the floor, but I'll introduce you very briefly.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
Jin is a well-known Chinese metaphysics expert, specifically in Feng Shui and Bazi or Chinese astrology. And I can't wait to hear more about you. You have published a dozen books. Now I hear that you are in the process of translating many of them in French and Spanish. I'll see if I can share just quickly some of them. Very interesting. Some of
Oh,
them you wrote with other scholars like Lily Chung, but most of them are your own production and creation here. So can you please take us through your journey? How did you get involved in the world of Feng Shui?
okay. Thank you. Nice to be here. So, Alexandra, believe it or not, I was living in Australia and I actually trained as a medical doctor. And I finished my training in the 90s. So, 1996, I finished my training. And then I finished my internship. And I actually was not very happy as a doctor. It was more my mother's dream, but I'm very grateful for my training. So I finished my internship and I went to study journalism because I wanted to be a TV and TV reporting journalism, that sort of person. And what happened was in 1997, so my family is originally from Singapore. I grew up in Singapore. I mean, I was born in Malaysia, but I grew up in Singapore. And that's why I learned Mandarin and English. And we moved to Australia in the mid-80s because my father had some issues with the government. And we moved into this apartment, which is very important to the Feng Shui story. And the apartment had 2 floors. And after we moved into the apartment, things went very wrong. My father and mother split, they got divorced. My father's business went down. He wasn't very happy living in that apartment. And then he moved from Australia to live in Indonesia, Hong Kong, etc., etc. So he was, typical Chinese scene where the father is providing for the family, the mother is looking after the teenagers in those days. So in 1997, after I finished medical school and I was doing journalism, my sister from Singapore wanted to come over and stay at the family apartment, but I didn't want her there for some reason. And because my niece and nephew were very young then, and I wanted some peace. So I said, you can't stay here. And she got very angry with me. So my second sister said, look, we don't know anything about Feng Shui, but I feel that the Feng Shui in this apartment is really bad because like I told you, my parents got divorced. None of my siblings or myself included had very happy relationships when we were living there. And there were 4 of us, 2 sisters, my brother and me. And everything was just going wrong. So she said, and with this latest family argument, she said, you need to call in a Feng Shui person to check the place, to see what's wrong with it. So this is 1997. There was no much internet in those days. So I opened the white pages and I found an Italian lady, can you imagine, who was doing Feng Shui in Australia. So I called her up and she was very intuitive and I'm still in touch with her. And she came to the apartment and she picked up a lot of stuff. So my mother had the bed directly under a beam and it split it in half. So she said, oh, the marriage blade got split in half, so your parents got split after they moved in here. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And my mother's very beautiful and she's still here and healthy in her 80s. And there was a mirror reflecting the bed. And she said, oh, the marriage reflected the mirror reflected a bad marriage. And the northwest sector of the house, as you know, is associated with the father, and it was a double-story apartment. So on the ground floor was actually a laundry room, and on the top floor was actually a toilet, bathroom. And she said, oh, the northwest sector is missing, and it's got these bad areas. Your father's business went down after you moved in. And finally, she said the dining room was next to the balcony and it was very windy in Perth, Australia. And she said the energy here is too unsettled. Everybody has argued in here. And I was thinking in my mind, all 6 of us, every combination has argued in that room. So after she left, I felt very embarrassed because, I'm Chinese and she's Italian. And she knew more about my culture than I did. So in like the end of 1997, so it was summer in Australia, winter in England, she said, I started buying every single book I could find in English. There's a boom in those days, publishing boom about Feng Shui that I could find because there was not much internet in those days. And I realized that understand the principles better. I seem to like, even Lillian Tu books in those days, yeah. I was able to understand it a lot better. And then in 1998, I did broadcasting journalism, and I would give the same book to my colleagues, and they wouldn't understand it as well as I did. And so in the back of my mind, I thought, you know, maybe I can do this because I seem to have a intuition and knack for it. I had the talent for it. And then when I finished journalism school at 1999, I couldn't find work in Australia because of various issues. Well, I don't sound Australian, so I couldn't make it there. And I couldn't find work in Singapore and Malaysia and Hong Kong, etc. So I was like, I don't want to be unemployed. I don't want to go back to medicine. So I said, maybe I have a future in this industry because from my time in Singapore, I can speak Mandarin better than most Westerners, and I can speak English better than the Chinese teachers. And so amazingly, I ended up doing a 2-year apprenticeship with a Taiwanese Feng Shui master in Taiwan. And during the day, I will be going to National Taiwan University in 2000 to improve my Mandarin because I was at junior high level. And then in the afternoon, I would go to see this Feng Shui master. So that's how I did my training between 2000 and 2002. So in my university program, I was known as the guy who was studying Feng Shui in the afternoons. So that's how I got my training. I was very lucky to have found him because his cousin was a friend of a good friend of mine. So that's how it all started.
So
And
I'm sure
he
it
couldn't.
has evolved from the first consultations you had then to what you're doing now. Probably your modus operandi, the way you approach a project is different from
Oh
back
yeah,
then.
I mean, compared to 20 years, I mean, now it's 2000, 2002 is more than 20 years ago. And, I was very lucky to have had that opportunity. And I used to translate some of his classical Chinese notes into English, thinking nobody would ever want to read it. I was so wrong. People really want the source material. And because of my language skills, I'm in a very unique position because I was able to translate that into English. So I'm very lucky there. And I'm just lucky that as I said, most of these Chinese masters, they don't speak English. Like my teacher, my entire training with him was only done in Mandarin because he couldn't speak English. Yes, no, thank you. That was it.
So I know that late after Feng Shui, you delved into Chinese astrology.
Yes, so I finished my Feng Shui training with him. Then I studied some flying stars with my father's friend in Indonesia for 1 year. And then a Western astrology reading brought me to Dubai in 2004, which is 20 years ago. And then when I was in Dubai, I'm going to say it out here, Jerry King's also in the industry, and he was actually my classmate in Arabic school in Yemen. And I got him interested in Feng Shui. He's a computer programmer. And then he started studying with Lily Chung in San Francisco because Jerry King lives in Vancouver.
Mm.
And so I was living in Dubai at that time, and nobody could really read my chart that well. And Jerry King said, hey, I studied with Lily. I found her online. Why did you go and study with her? So in those days, I called her up from Dubai from the landline in 2009, and she read my chart. And part of me said, she's actually correct. And so I dropped everything and I flew over directly to San Francisco, and I studied with her for 2 weeks. And then, as you know, Bazi is a very detailed field, and I continued going to studying with her for many, many years. So I would do 2 weeks, and then I would go away, and then 2010, 2 more weeks, and so on. And I studied with her. I go and see her as long as she's still here, but of course she's in her 80s now. She's 87 this year. So how much more time has she got? We don't know. I hope she's healthy and happy. But she's getting tired now. So after COVID, when I only see her for a few days and improve my astrology knowledge that way.
Yeah, very
So
good.
that's how it started. And in 2007, I started studying Ziwei astrology with Tony Tan, who I'm still in touch with in Singapore. So I know both Ziwei astrology and Bazi astrology. But Ziwei astrology is very difficult for some people to study because there are too many stars and the names in Chinese.
That's true. I'm sure you have a linear or a friendly approach to interpreting,
Yeah, I mean,
astrology.
Ziwei astrology can tell you a lot more about the personality rather than Bazi. Bazi can only tell you so much. But what is very good about Bazi is that it tells you precisely whether it's a good day, a bad day, a good animal, a bad animal. While Ziwei, it's more about the general picture.
So what would you think is the best part of your job? What do you enjoy doing?
I like teaching people, and I also like writing and researching, and I like seeing um, how effective some of the stuff that I've learned is, or what I teach is, because a lot of people stop studying Bazi because they think it's not accurate. But I think because of my training as a medical doctor, there have to be certain ground rules you have to follow. And you know, a lot of Chinese, when I was studying with my Chinese teacher back in Taiwan, he used to yell at me sometimes and say, "It is like this because I said so." And I always said, no. I said, if I'm dealing with European students, and if I tell them Western students, and I say, it is like this because I said so, they're not going to accept it. Western students expect accountability. And that is a big issue in this industry because Chinese students do not ask for accountability. So a lot of Chinese teachers get away with it because I say so. And I was just talking to my Italian friend. I said, look, there's this formula, but no Chinese teacher that I've come across has been able to actually give practical application, so I don't use it. So Chinese teachers are more into theory, and because I said so, and Western students are more into application, whether it works for me and my clients. So you see that there is this disconnect here. So I feel that because of my background, I know the theory through the language, but I also have this accountability to Western students. I cannot teach them something that doesn't work and then make excuses for it. And I think that's what I learned in medical school. You can't tell the patient, you know,
Can we find
wishy-washy.
this methodology through your books?
Yes, and you can find it through my books, but obviously, you know, it's complicated. I mean, unfortunately, especially in the 90s, some of the colleagues in the industry, they would give students the mistaken impression that you can learn Bazi in 2 days or in 4 days, you know, and that's not right and that's not fair. But don't find yourself in this situation. I hope that's good advice.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you.
And I see from our conversation, your direction, your next steps are taking you more towards Russia. So is that like your next step, or you know?
No, I still maintain my student base in Russia
Yes.
through my translator. Of course, I can't speak Russian that well. And I mean, I don't want to get involved in any politics and the whole conflict thing. I mean, because, you know, we're trying to rise above the politics. And I can say that my students are women and they are older, and they obviously do not support violence and they do not support politics. And so yeah, you know, so I treat my students, and they're just trying to get on with their everyday life. And so I try my best to help them, and I try my best to provide them with the knowledge that they can use to improve their lives. Of course, some people will be very angry and upset that I'm still going to Russia and I'm talking to these people. But as I said, we're rising above the politics.
Yeah. Well, would you say that at the end of the day, Feng Shui, Chinese astrology is about to bring up awareness of, you know, of
The
each
Chinese
one
have
of
been
us?
using Feng Shui and Chinese astrology for centuries.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was studying in Taiwan, when I gave a talk about it, one of the professors, who Chinese professor, says, look, if Feng Shui is just superstition, I
Vibe.
wouldn't advise that. The three of us agree that it was creepy.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, so there you go. So yeah, so as I said, I think it's very important to listen to your heart, because the Italian woman who did the feng shui for me 27 years ago, she said your instincts are always correct. Your intuition is always correct. So listen to your intuition.
Would you give a last advice about how to trust your intuition? Do you have any tips for that? Maybe some people, because they build on knowledge, you know, sometimes when we trust our knowledge, we forget about our intuition. So do you think that?
Well, I mean, knowledge brings you so far. So let's say you're talking to somebody and suddenly you're like, I don't know, I don't think they like me, or I don't think they're telling me the truth. You know, then you know, you feel like something, it feels wrong. Like talking with you now, we're having a pleasant conversation. I like your energy, you know. I saw your face, you're smiling, you're smiling with your eyes. You know, it's clear that you know it's working. But yeah, you can sense it. It's like, what's the best way? Think about the time when you walk into an argument or when you were very upset with somebody and you had those negative feelings. And then think about a time when you were happy and celebrating and you with your best friend or with the people that you love and you feel such a warm feeling. And then I think that's basically feelings. You either feel good or you feel bad. And they get upset. They can feel the bad energy. Okay, so I
So
hope
on
that was
this note,
helpful.
we're heading towards the end of our exchange, of our interview. 1,000 thanks for accepting to talk to the Feng Shui Society through
My
me.
pleasure, my pleasure.
And I hope that you come to more of our events in the future.
Sure, sure. Yes, I'll be happy to. But I
Yes,
can't believe it. I
absolutely.
mean, we're talking about classical feng shui here. I'm telling people to listen to their instincts and all that. I mean,
Both. It's the yin and the yang in
correct.
many ways. Yeah.
And they say that feng shui is a science and it's an art. It is a science because you need to know certain formulas that you need to apply. But it is also an art because you cannot force these formulas into every situation because every house is different, every client is different. So you have to use that judgment to work out what you can use. So for example, I mean, when I first came to Dubai, there were some people doing feng shui here, and then they were saying that, oh, we're using, I don't know, 8 mansions method, East Square, West Square, and the husband has to leave out to the southeast corner. So he couldn't use the front door. He had to always walk around to the back door and walk into the kitchen. And sometimes in Dubai, it's so hot. And you're like, isn't this making his life more stressful? This is not adding to the quality of his life. It's actually adding to the stress in his life. And that's why it's an art, because you have to apply this formula, but you have to take into account the needs of your client. So when I was living in Perth, somebody said, oh, the good flying stars are in this room. So they put the husband in a bunk bed in that room.
What did you suggest in the end?
No, I heard this from a lady who was doing feng shui. And then she said that it got so bad that the husband was so angry that he was sleeping in a bunk bed with his wife because of feng shui. He was ready to divorce her because he was so fed up. So you see, these are examples of people, because knowledge is one thing. But if you are not sensitive to people's needs, and you're not sensitive to people's situation, this is the damage that you're going to inflict on people.
Yes.
So my advice would have been, reposition find out whether there are other rooms where you can put the couple in, make sure they're sleeping together in the same bed, make sure that they have a wall behind them, they can see who's coming in through the front door. Structure, 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 what you can see with your eye is always more important than a formula. And then, because, in Chinese we have a saying, one mountain is always higher than another mountain. There's always somebody who's more beautiful. There's somebody who's always younger. There's always somebody who's more intelligent than you.
It's true.
And so you can't behave like that, because one day you're going to meet your match. It's like, the tennis players, right? I mean, Roger Federer was #1 for so long, and then Djokovic came along, and that was it, right? And now Djokovic is on the way down. I'm a tennis fan, and the new players, Sinner and Alcaraz, are coming up. So you will never be on top forever. So there's also another saying: be nice to people on your way up, so they'll be nice to you on your way down.
Yes, things work in curves and cycles.
Yes, it's very true. I
All
can
right.
also tell you a karma story that I did for myself, but I shouldn't, because it shouldn't be recorded, because I was very naughty.
Later.
And I got my karma back, but it was a karma story to do with driving, and I got it back. So when it happened to me, I looked up at the universe and said, I deserve this. Because when I was a teenager, I didn't drive that well. Let's put it that way.
Okay, Jin. So on this note of wisdom, I say thank you very much, and I hope to see you very soon.
Yeah, you will see me very soon, you know when.
All right, after the recording. Thank you. Thank you very much.